Okay, bienvenidos a todos. Welcome everyone to this workshop on visualizing climate change for impact, organized by the United Nations Environmental Programme in collaboration with the Colegio Hacienda Los Alcaparros, the ACP MEAs 3 program, and the groundbreaking documentary film initiative, Our People, Our Climate. I'm very looking forward to explore the power of images and storytelling all together in the next 1.5 hours. We're having people joining us from around the world now in this room, and therefore ask you to use the chat box in case you have any questions or want to provide some inputs, unless you're in the breakout rooms. There you will have the space to share your ideas and talk in small groups by unmuting yourself. Before the team of Our People, Our Climate will share with us their work and insights on visualizations and journalism around the environment, I want to warmly welcome my colleague Balakrishna Pisupati, who is the head of the environmental policy at the United Nations Environmental Programme, for some welcoming remarks. Thank you, and over to you, Bala.
Thank you, Louisa. Just to confirm that you can hear me. Thank you. Yes, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, colleagues and friends. What an exciting time to convene, essentially on a very, very interesting topic on storytelling and visualization. I'm sure that all of us have grown up listening to stories, and storytelling has always been a part of a lot of our cultural upbringing, whichever part of the world we are. So I'm very glad that we are focusing on an extremely important topic on climate change, adaptation, mitigation, but then to use the combination of visuals and also to tell the story about climate change and our options for adaptation, mitigation, and all the related. My name is Balakrishna, as my colleague Louisa mentioned. So today, the entire session that you are a part of is going to focus on two things. How can we make the visuals essentially to tell the story of where we are on this planet in terms of our struggles to manage the environment more in the context of climate change, and what collectively, and more importantly, as the youth and youngsters, the future generation, you can do based on this kind of an engagement to both get inspired, but also more than that, to take some lessons, some experiences from this particular interaction, so that you can design some interventions, some activities, and some actions on the ground. And essentially, this actually is a collective effort, as my colleague had mentioned. It's a joint effort of UN Environment Programme, GRULAC Junior. We're also joined by our colleagues. I'll introduce them once I finish my introductory presentation. But important to mention the Minneapolis College of Art and Design and University of St. Thomas. So thanks a lot for joining this particular presentation. When we talk of storytelling, we always assume that this is for youngsters, this is for children. But then many of you may or may not be aware that today storytelling is something which is being extensively supported and potentially suggested as a critical tool to work on big multilateral and international problems and challenges and issues. What you see on the screen is a very, very recent publication that appeared in a very, very prestigious international journal called Science. I'm sure some of you, if not all of you, would have heard of Science. And this particular article mentions on the role, relevance, and impact of storytelling in science policy ecosystems. And of course, when we are talking of climate change in the context of a larger programmatic perspective, multilateral issue, a lot of time is the science, it's the policy and the practice that is often that gets the attention. But then the background to this is that storytelling affects a lot of us. It's a very, very important cognitive function that we as humans have actually developed a large over millennium. An effective story, and effective story which is not just oral but also visual, can affect our brain, as you can see on the screen, in 3 or 4 important ways. One, it actually activates the parts of the brain that allow the listener to turn the story into their own ideas and experiences. That is why an effective story, the people who listen to the story live the characters. And that is the biggest advantage of a good story and a good visual. It also helps as a kind of a mirror where the listeners will not only experience what the brain activity of each other, the teller and the listener, but also is able to connect that into actions. And an effective story will also increase the levels of dopamine, which is, as many of you have heard, an important chemical that triggers a lot of emotions in the brain when it gets secreted. And lastly and importantly, it also processes a number of actions through cortex. It may sound a little too heavy for us to start this session of storytelling and visualization, but I'd like to sort of share this one graphic on the power of pictures and on the power of visualization. What you see there is a very, very interesting graphic that says that 90% of the information transmitted to the brain is mostly visual. And it's only 10% of the text that one sees on the screen, whether in a lecture or a presentation, that gets into the brain and gets connected. And 95% of messages that are visual gets retained in the brain to an extent. And then the studies indicate, research indicates, that the brain can actually deal with visuals 60,000 times more than text. And 40% of the people respond to better visual information than plain text. And that is the power of visuals, and that is the power of storytelling. And what you're going to be listening, what you're going to be a part of in the next 90 minutes or 80 minutes or so, is exactly to give you a bit of that experience of how to make use of visuals and how to make use of some very, very simple messages that can connect you with not just the problems and challenges on the ground, but also quickly identify what kind of an impact and what kind of solutions we need to find. All I'm going to do is to show you 3 or 4 visuals and then explain on the background to this particular event. Look at that picture. It doesn't need a story. Huh? You don't need to have a 10-page article to basically say how children and youth are impacted by climate change, by floods, and by water. And that one image tells you a number of messages. It talks about climate change, it talks about flooding, it talks about the most important part of it, who bears the burden of such kind of catastrophe or such kind of an impact of unusual weather patterns, unusual weather conditions and floods. It's the children. So just one visual you're able to basically capture, you're able to imagine the kind of issues that one confronts when we are discussing climate change. We look at that visual, and this is actually something that happens all the time on the ground in Africa, where people really struggle for water, struggle for drinking water. And look at that particular visual. It's just not about a number of women trying extremely hard to collect some water, but the condition. So this is about the dignity of people. It is about the rights of people. Many of you probably are aware that the United Nations have declared environmental rights as a fundamental right to human well-being and human security. And this one picture tells you so much, not just about the people who actually are responsible for collecting water. It is about the living conditions. It is about the conditions of scarcity of water. And most importantly, it does tell us the sad story in certain parts of the world where it's just not the scarcity, but it is even the meager availability of water is something which people really see it as an extremely important and a precious resource for their lives and livelihoods. Another gripping picture in terms of children walking long distances for collecting water, collecting food. It's just not about the children, taking those big vessels, sharing the burden among themselves, but it is also about the lost childhood for a lot of these kids. And this is where we are. And look at that cartoon. I mean, somebody is asking, may I have a plastic bag? And this shopkeeper is saying that, oh, it's already inside. The amount of plastic pollution, the amount of microplastics that the fish and the animals are consuming today is alarming. And these are our actions. These are the actions from various parts of the world. And this is a very, very telling visual. Just not as a cartoon, but it is also extremely sort of powerful in terms of the messaging. That today, when we talk of life in water, the marine organisms, the fish, or a lot of animals that we see around us are consuming plastics. And the plastic pollution is really, really affecting both the livelihoods of the people, but also of the biodiversity or the life around us very, very significantly. And then we also see these kinds of images. These are the reports that are produced by a number of agencies, both UN agencies as well as other civil society organizations, that basically tell us on what is the risk of youth and children when you talk of climate change. So what does these kinds of visuals or reports tell us? Do we know what we need to do? To an extent, yes. We all know what we need to do. There is no dearth of knowing about the solutions or what we need to do. But to a large extent, this is what we do. We assume or we profess or we say we are responsible for taking action. And this is how we take the responsibility. And we need to negotiate between countries that have the resources, countries that do not have the resources, countries that pollute, countries that contribute to climate change, countries that are impacted by climate change. And then we negotiate. We negotiate on a regular basis year after year at the UN Climate Conference. And not just one, but many of such multilateral, bilateral meetings. But that is how we negotiate. And then we all say that we need to act now. And as you can see on the right-hand part of the panel, that is how we are acting. So an extremely powerful visual in terms of what is intended and what is happening. You don't need to read 10 reports on how climate change is impacting us, who is doing what is being done. But this kind of visual is something which is going to be extremely important for us to take home the message. And that's my last visual. So if we continue doing what we're doing, Tarzan will end up, and you know where he's going to be landing. And not just Tarzan, but all of us will be landing in a very, very similar situation. So the purpose of this entire 80 minutes or 75 minutes now, I've taken about 10 or 15 minutes at the time, is essentially to provide you that kind of an experience of how visualization, how storytelling, how putting some images in front of people can really tell some compelling and complex stories in a very, very simple fashion. And how do we get trained to do it? We have two experts, Dr. Olaf Kulke from the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and Dr. Alec Johnson from the University of St. Thomas. Both are the principal course coordinators for the Our People, Our Climate program and project. We have enormous experience working with children and youth across the world, including in the Latin America region, in terms of providing you that kind of an orientation, that kind of an enabling sort of environment to learn, to visualize, and to make things happen on the ground, and make you all ambassadors of change on the ground. And after they make their interventions, we will be joined by 4 colleagues, 4 youth from the GRULAC Junior program, Cristina Correa Puentes, Ana Sofia Corazo, Ana Sofia Herrera, and Nicholas Gomez, who will be sharing some of their experiences as well, based on their engagement with similar activity in the past. So with those few remarks, over to you, Olaf, and I'd like to take us to the next session of this particular event. Thank you.
Thank you, Bala, and good morning, everyone. It's It's an honor to be here this morning and to share this workshop with all of you. I'm here with my colleague Alec and four amazing students from Colegio Hacienda Los Alcaparros in La Calera in Colombia. And we worked with these students and other students in Colombia last year. Our People Our Climate initiative started during the pandemic in 2020. And really was an attempt to work with youth around the world, starting in the Canadian Arctic, and was an attempt to work with youth to visualize climate change as they see it in their backyard, at home, in a number of different ways. So we have been working on this project now for several years, and in 2021, the results, that some of which you will see in just a minute here in the slideshow that I'm going to be sharing, were part of the COP26 conference in Glasgow, Scotland. So some of this imagery was shown to delegates, was actively part of the conversations during COP26, the climate change conference in Glasgow, just a couple of years ago. So your images can have a significant impact. Your images can make a significant impact on policymakers. And I kind of want to start off with that. Last year, we worked with a school in Colombia on the same workshop. And today we're going to give you just a little bit of a flavor in an hour of what this entire workshop was about. There's a lot more to it, and we would like to share more of the workshop with all of you. But we're going to start with a sort of a small overview of what the project is about and what kind of images it rendered. So I'm going to share my screen now and begin our presentation. You should be all able to see the image right now. This is an image of a young man here in the Canadian Arctic. He's actually in Pond Inlet on Baffin Island. It's about 70 degrees north in the Northern Hemisphere. And he's looking out onto his ancestral hunting lands, where his ancestors, his family, typically hunts for caribou and seal and other animals for sustenance. And in this case here, this young man is wondering about the future of these hunting lands and how long are they going to be frozen like they are as they are in this picture here. So this is an image that was taken by one of our participants from the earliest workshop. And I wanted to just start off with that one here to sort of set the mood, set the tone for it. Bala already gave us the introduction as to who has helped with the design of this workshop. So I'm going to just briefly mention that, I want to thank the UN Environmental Program for inviting us, and also for our colleagues from Los Alcaparros and joining us this morning, and our colleagues from GRULAC Junior as well. My name is Olaf Kulke. I'm at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and I developed this course together with Alec Johnson from the University of St. Thomas. And today we are joined by four students from GRULAC Junior from Hacienda Los Alcaparros School in La Calera in Colombia, Christina, Anna, and Nicholas. So we're going to be our instructional team that will share some of the results of this workshop. The entire project, Our People, Our Climate, really is about one single question. And that is, how do we see climate change? How can it be visualized? How can it be made clear to people that it's occurring to us, that it's happening to us, that it's impacting us on a daily basis? And there are various ways in which we can make climate change visible. And you all have seen some of these images. The first thing that we can do, of course, is to collect macro scale, very large scale scientific data and create these sort of global images of climate change patterns, particularly how temperature on an annual basis, on a daily basis might be changing here. So this is sort of an example here of a global representation of climate change that shows you where it was cooler or warmer in 2020 compared with the middle of the 20th century here. So essentially showing that most of the world particularly the northern hemisphere here, and specifically the Arctic regions, have seen the largest increases in temperature really since the 1950s, so over the course of about 70 years here. So this is a representation of global patterns. That's not necessarily something that you and I can see on a daily basis, but we can still make climate change visible by collecting data across the globe. We can also visualize it this way. That sort of shows the global average temperatures compared with the middle of the 20th century, again, showing us that we went from considerably cooler global temperatures to considerably warmer global temperatures now, and are still on an upward trend. So the first ways in which we can make climate change visible is through these sort of representations, these views of global patterns. But what's much more powerful in terms of creating imagery that is inspiring us to act is to show how people are locally impacted by climate change. This is an image that was actually shot in 2019 before the pandemic in Alaska in the United States. And it shows a road that is collapsed. This road has collapsed because the permafrost under it, the frozen ground under it, has thawed and it's giving away now. And the water has essentially exited the soil and it's collapsing here. So the road can no longer be used. It has to be repaired by the community. And this is happening all over Alaska and various communities here. So people are directly impacted by climate change in a number of different ways. So, many of you may be familiar with or have experienced in your lifetime some extreme precipitation. Bala already showed us an image earlier of flooding that impacts people on a daily basis. So we have to get used to, and we are getting used to, more extreme precipitation. This is something that you can capture in your local imagery. You might also experience more extreme daily temperatures. So this is another phenomenon that we'll have to capture, that we can capture as photojournalists, sort of showing people and how they react to extreme daily temperatures here. In this case, you have a man shading himself as he's sitting in this urban environment here. Natural hazards may be another thing that is the direct impact of climate change that is experienced by people here. I believe this is an image from Germany a few years ago when a major flood hit one of the regions of Germany after weeks of extensive rainfall, and the infrastructure essentially started crumbling around various cities here, taking down bridges, such as the one that you can see here. So these are some of the impacts on our urban landscapes, but we may also see that new species of insects, new species of frogs, new species of specific animals are coming into climatic areas, into climatic regions where they never existed before. So you may see new bugs, new animals around in your neighborhood that you've never seen before throughout your lifetime. This is another thing that you can capture in a number of different images here. So this is an example of a specific frog in South America that has particularly invaded in the Andes here. For the people in the Arctic that are the most impacted really by climate change on a daily basis as of now, this means a number of different things. This is an image actually captured by one of the students that was part of our workshop in 2020. And she's telling the story with this images of this man here. His name is Jacob J. Pudi. And he's telling the story of the mountain or the hill behind him there, and how a glacier used to sit on top of this rock that you can see there. And he also talks about the ice that is under him that used to be about 7 feet, so about 2 meters thick. Now it's only about 1 meter thick. So for many people, climate change is visible or is experienced by less safety that they're experiencing in their environment. And for the Inuit in the Canadian North, this means less safety on the ice in particular. It also can mean that more accidents are happening here. What you see here is a number of all-terrain vehicles that have been pulled out of a river that they were not able to cross like they used to because the ground is no longer as frozen. So these are ways in which we can capture climate change. You may be aware of new emerging diseases, and you can capture people's reaction to new diseases, the impact of new diseases that are impacting your local area as well, be that a specific virus or a specific disease that's carried, for example, by insects. So when it comes to actually visualizing climate change, Alec and I want to share just a couple of principles with you today, and Alec will go into these in a lot more detail. So I'm going to just very briefly show you the 7 principles of climate change visualization that you should apply as you are developing your images that we would like you to contribute to this workshop. The first one is to focus on real people. Show us real people in your lives. So you can see 2 images here of people that I met in the Canadian Arctic, that our students met in the Canadian Arctic. This is an Inuit guide here that was taken our group of students and us out onto the land. And you can see an example of a staged shot. On the left side here, you see this Inuit man in traditional hunting clothing. And on the right side, you see him on his snowmobile with a school bus behind him there. The school bus actually is used to store meat in the winter. So what we're going to ask you to do is to stage some shots and also to show people as they're working, as they're in action. The second thing we want you to focus on is to tell new stories. These are images, again, from working with youth, working with colleagues here in Alaska. This is the Koyukon River in Alaska here, and this is the erosion along the river. So we shot these images with the students about a week after this particular collapse that you see on the right picture there, when the road collapsed happened. So try to focus on things that happened recently in your life and tell us new stories. The third principle of climate change visualization is to show us patterns, causes, or impacts. In this case here, a student created a picture of the fuel tanks in a Canadian Arctic town by the name of Arviat, to show us that one of the major causes of climate change in the Arctic is the use of fossil fuels that is abundantly used in the Canadian Arctic and elsewhere around the world. So fossil fuels would be one thing to sort of capture and its impact on climate change. The fourth principle is to evoke powerful emotions, to show people in action. This is actually during the protests in Glasgow in November of 2021, during COP26, during the UN climate conference. And this young man is sort of standing inside this metal globe that is rolling around here, essentially saying, I'm sort of captured by climate change. I'm impacted by climate change. I'm stuck inside this globe that is experiencing climate change on a daily basis. We also want you to show local and serious impacts, such as this example of flooding here. And then the sixth principle is to carefully use protest imagery. We would like you to use protest imagery if you can capture it, but we also would like you to emphasize that this protest that you're capturing should always be peaceful and should always be sort of contextualized in a specific way. So in this case here, we have a demonstration in Glasgow during COP26 again, and you can see the young man with his metal globe that's sort of rolling around, and you have a number of people drumming here as well. So show people in action as they're protesting as well. This is an important element of the visualization principles. And then the last thing we'd like you to think about is know who you are actually creating for here. This is a projection onto the hill in Edinburgh, Scotland. And this is really a message for the delegates of COP26 that were staying both in Edinburgh and in Glasgow at the time of the conference. And this is really a call to action here. Let's do net zero. So these are the 7 principles you should be applying. And I'm going to hand it over to Alec now, who's going to walk us through storytelling with photos.
Thank you, Olaf, and thank you, Bala, for your wonderful opening remarks. I am so excited to be here with all of you. This is just such a wonderful group I can see coming in from all over the globe. Again, my name is Alec Johnson, and we're going to talk about storytelling with photos, also known as photojournalism or photo essays. And photojournalism is one way to become a very intimate observer of your environment. One of our participants, Yoma, noted in the chat an opportunity to reconnect, and that is exactly what it is, to reconnect, become an intimate observer. And so our hope through this activity is that you become more confident advocates for your climate and environment, and become empowered and inspired to take some action. Go ahead to the next slide, Olaf. To accomplish this, here, my talk is structured around these topics. First, we're going to give you a brief introduction to the photojournalism challenge we're asking you to do. Then I'm going to dive in briefly to the 4 types of photos used in photojournalism. Then we're going to put you in breakout exercises, breakout rooms exercises. And the breakout rooms are simply designed to get you with partners thinking about how you're going to tell this story. After the breakout exercises, we're going to talk about the importance of writing captions and how to do it for your images. We'll briefly talk about ways you can explore and take action. We'll revisit some of the assignment details, and if time permits, I'll talk about technical considerations and ethical considerations. And if you miss something along the way, don't worry. We will provide you a exercise handout that also walks you through all of this information. Okay, next. So your challenge after today's session is to take 20 photos, and there are 4 types of photos, 5 each. Write a caption for each photo, and then at a minimum explore, and if not just explore, take some action, and you're then going to upload all that later into a shared Google Drive. So next, Olaf. Here are the 4 essential types of photos we use in photojournalism. The first one is called the establishing shot, and that sets a scene. The next is the action shot, and that's pretty straightforward. That's people doing things. The third type of photo you'll create is what's called a detail shot or close-up or extreme. And the fourth is the environmental portrait. And we'll dive into more detail on these in your breakout sessions. But before we get there, we probably need to talk about the types of stories you can tell. The first really is about causes and impacts of climate change. And this can be from automotive and industrial emissions to burning of toxic garbage and so on. This is one of the most common stories to tell, and it is easily illustrated with photos, possibly overtold. But you can think on a very large scale with this story, or on a very small scale, right down to your own dwelling or home. Related to the causes is the impact story. And in this story, you want to show the direct effects of climate change and how they're impacting people in the landscape. Now, this is one of the harder stories to tell because it also requires a bit of research and effort to identify what is exactly being impacted and how to visualize it. The next type of story you might tell is a coping strategy story. And in this story, we're simply showing, are you everyone hearing me okay, Olaf?
Yeah, we can hear.
Okay, I just saw some messages. Yep. So the coping strategy story, and in this story, we simply want to show how people are adapting to the effects of climate change. And some examples of that might be water conservation activities, travel adaptation, as we see in our center image here, how people choose certain clothing or other lifestyle attributes that people engage in to simply cope day to day. And the third story, and it's also my favorite category of storytelling, is stories about mitigation efforts. And in this story, you will show how people in your communities or in your family or yourself are taking action to directly minimize personal contribution to factors of climate change. This could be, for example, utilizing rainwater collection systems, people using innovative ways to recycle or deal with waste disposal, or even smaller choices like fuel for cooking. And in our image here, right down to using a micro solar panel for electricity. I love this category because it inspires people to take action. It's positive, it's local, it's personal. So that being said, I'd like you to start working on your challenges now. And in just a moment, we're going to put you into your first breakout session. And you're going to, with your partners, discuss this idea of the establishing photo. And we saw this photo that Olaf previously presented from Pond Inlet. And I want you to use this image in your groups to think about where you might shoot an establishing photo. Photographically speaking, establishing shots are generally wide shots of buildings and landscapes. They might include signage, landmarks, people for sure, or other obvious signals of time and place. And they need to help convince your audience that the story is taking place, for example, in this very cold and remote, pristine part of the world. We are asking you for each type of photo to take 5 images, because sometimes one image alone won't adequately tell this part of the story. So in your breakout session, we are asking that you first discuss how this image does and possibly does not set the entire scene, and then discuss some possible locations within your own community to create an establishing shot. So, Louise, can you send our participants to their first breakout room?
We'll send them now.
Yes, please. And everybody, you'll have about 5 minutes.
Winfried, do you feel the breakout sessions were successfully allocated?
Okay, I can see that it's showing the breakout sessions. And I can see when you click on the icon above showing show all breakout sessions, you can see session 1 has 4 people, session 2 has 1 person. So the breakout sessions have been created, but now not all people have been moved.
Okay. Should I end the session again and try again?
No, just send people from when you go to there's an icon at the bottom of your page saying breakout session, and then now you can add people to the different sessions.
It says the last panelist has left the breakout session. You must assign at least 1 panelist to host a breakout session. Is this true?
Yeah, each breakout session needs to have a panelist.
Oh, this. This we didn't discuss before. Okay, I wasn't aware of that. So can you make the breakout sessions from your end or not?
No, only the host can do that.
Okay, then I try to do this again. So I end all and assign again the breakout sessions.
No, you can send a panelist to each session so that now you can be able to add people there.
Okay, I will do this.
And also individually join, I see. So we could choose which one we're joining.
Okay.
So I see 5 breakout sessions and it invites me to join any one of them. All right, I'm joining now.
So everyone has gone to session 5.
Okay, it seems like that we face some IT challenges here with the breakout sessions. So Winfried, to run the other breakout sessions smoothly, what do I need to do from my side? Because it seems that the participants were muted in the breakout sessions.
In the breakout sessions, you can make them. You can upgrade them by right-clicking on their name. Let me just claim the host. Let me claim the host and then I can do it for you.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Sorry, everyone, for these challenges. We hope we can figure out the problem soon. Winfried, kindly confirm once you are the host. Now you're the host. Perfect.
Okay.
I mean, in the meanwhile, Alec, I would propose you move forward, and then hopefully the luck is on our side for the next breakout session. Thank you.
Happy to. Thank you, Olaf. Okay, so while they're straightening out the breakout rooms, the first type of image we're asking you to create is the establishing shot. And again, this shot is really intended to anchor your whole story and give a sense of time and place. We'll go to the next, Olaf. The other, another type of shot we ask you to create is the getting the action photo. And as the name implies, these images show people doing various activities being impacted by various aspects of climate change. And in one way, this should be the easiest of our photos to take, because it's also one that many of us are already familiar with. So as you think about a story you want to tell, then you can think about how to capture people actively involved in that story. Another way these, and in another way, these might be the most difficult to create. You need to find a place where people are engaging in the activities relevant to your story. You also might need to gain some permission to create them and photograph them. This could also be a frustrating part of the exercise because, well, people are pretty much in constant motion. So as a photographer, it sort of becomes a little bit of a challenge to capture what you want to capture. But it should also feel fun and energizing. This is an opportunity to explore, to become more intimate observer, and really feel what people are actually doing and how things are affecting them. So it's great when you go into photograph action shots to really pay attention to the flow and energy of a scene and just work with it. Your choice of action shots should be directly influenced by the type of story you're choosing to tell. And like all types of images here, we're asking you to make at least 5 action photos, but it would be quite common for a photographer to take many more than 5 images during this phase. So Olaf, we'll go to the next slide and talk about that. The third type of image we're asking you to create is a detail image, or a close-up or extreme close-up photo, and this speaks for itself. But if you just hit pause for a moment and think about, we start with an establishing shot, we move into action shots, and now we're bringing the viewer closer in to really experience a more intimate aspect of the story you want to tell. Elements of human presence can be visible in these sorts of detail shots. For example, hands or feet, suggestive parts, but not required. And if you're in a natural environment, obviously plants, animals, and insects are an important subject matter. But regardless of what you're doing, try to pre-visualize, which means to see in your head. Imagine and see the shots you would like to make as detail shots before you go out and start gathering these. But as you're shooting your action photos, that is a great environment to also capture your detail shots. Okay, Olaf, next. And the final type of photo we're asking you to make is what I'll refer to as the environmental portrait. And the environmental portrait is photographed in the subject's usual environment, such as in their home or workplace, but it can be wherever you're also shooting your action photos, and typically illuminates the subject's life and surroundings. Subjects in the action photos make great portrait subjects, and again, we ask you to make at least 5 portrait photos. This is probably the most difficult part of the assignment because, one, you're going to need permission to interact with your subject. And this is the only task, and you heard Olaf reference this, where you should consider staging your subject. You're going to stage for light, you're going to stage for concept, background, and so you have some decisions to make with this one. Really compelling portraits place the subject in the relevant context of the story you're wanting to tell. And for example, here, this young man is holding both a whale or seal hunting spear. I forget exactly what it was used for, and a rifle for hunting. And this is up in the Arctic, and where hunting is a important everyday part of life to survive. And so in this portrait, we're using props with this young man to illustrate how things have changed in their culture to survive on the Arctic tundra. One of the things I do want to note here is that portraits can be group portraits, but more frequently, depending on that group portrait, more frequently, a single individual can be a stronger, more compelling part of the portrait. So I'm going to hit pause there for a moment and go to Louise. Are we ready? Can we at least put them in a breakout room now?
I hope so. Winfred kindly helped us from IT side, and she said she's ready. So hopefully now it works. So for everyone, once you're in the breakout room, you should now be able to unmute yourself by just clicking on the microphone.
Here's what I would suggest in the interest of time, that we maybe just now do one breakout room for about 10 minutes and sort of discuss and deal with these 4 types of images at one time.
Okay. Olaf,
Okay.
you're unmuted.
So
Can you
do I
reiterate?
start the sessions?
So so you propose 10-minute breakout session. Okay, perfect. Winfred, is this possible?
How many minutes?
10.
10 minutes.
Okay, let me just change the timing to 10. Okay. And one breakout session.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
You want one breakout session?
Sorry?
You want only one breakout session? I have
For 10
7.
minutes, yes, but with a maximum, I would say again, of 4 people, 3 or 4 people.
Okay.
That's possible. Okay, thank you.
ones that are unable to join break. Hello, Winfred. Hello, Winfred. Hello, Louisa.
Hello.
Sorry, there's a bit of feedback from the chat, so a few people are unable to join the breakout room.
Yeah, I know. The thing is, I'm no longer the host, so I can't do anything. Winfred is the
Okay.
host now, and I don't really understand where the issue lies. The problem is that the last time we had the meeting, she didn't inform me that each breakout rooms requires one panelist as well.
So should we join one of the rooms?
Yes, so it would be important, like once you receive the invitation to join a breakout room, that you accept it and join the breakout room.
Okay, all right, I see. That's okay. So I hope she'll assign me again because I didn't join the other one.
Okay. Yeah, and I try to see from my end if I can do anything, but now as I'm not the host anymore. But I will see. Let me see.
Should I just join? I see I was assigned in session 2. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. But there are 2 session 2s, so the breakout session 2 and another session 2. Okay, let me join the one that has people.
I'm from Kenya, but I'm not getting anything from the breakout rooms.
Hello, everyone. For some of you, the breakout sessions worked. For some of us had some issues. I'm very sorry for this IT inconvenience. Yeah, but I hope some had some fruitful discussions and exchanges. And I think Olaf, I see Olaf is sharing his slides again. So over to you, Alec and Olaf.
Apologies, I was lost somewhere in the breakout interspace. All right, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep,
yes.
good. Great, thank you. Okay, we'll keep her moving here. One part of the assignment we're asking you to do is write captions for each photo you submit. This is a necessary part of photojournalism and storytelling. So I want to talk a little bit with you about caption basics, and then we'll look at a great example of a caption. So when you're preparing your captions, you should be targeting about 40 to 50 words per caption. And there are a few rules around captioning. First, a good caption describes the scene in the photo, and that means the who, the what, the where, and the when of a scene. Basic facts: who, what, where, when. A really good caption will go a step further and provide new information that is definitely not obvious in the photo. And we'll see an example in a moment of what that looks like. Captions are written in the present tense voice and never start with one of these three words, a, an, or the. We never start a caption with those three. So, Olaf, if you would forward one slide. Here's a great caption, and on the left is a photo and caption. This came from National Public Radio, and it had to do with whales becoming stranded and dying on beaches. I'm going to read the caption to you. People look at a dead gray whale at Ocean Beach in San Francisco, California, May 2019, a year when 122 gray whales died in the U.S., according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Last year, 47 of the whales died. This is a great caption. So on the right-hand side of the slide, I break down why it's working well. So the caption opens with, people look at a dead gray whale. That immediately describes the who and what of the scene. It's in present tense and starts with people. The next thing we read is at Ocean Beach in San Francisco, California, May 2019. So now we're getting the final two specific facts about where and when. We have who, what, where, when. And then the next chunk is all this new factual information not obvious in the photo itself about the number of whales dying. Additionally, this caption properly attributes the photo to the photographer. So this is what a great caption looks like. And I want to take a moment to remind everybody, this information is all contained in a exercise document we'll provide you at the end of the workshop. Okay, Olaf, next. First important tip about writing captions. Definitely when you go out and photograph, take a notebook and a writing device in the field so you can capture the important four parts: the who, the what, the where, and the when information for your captioning. This may seem obvious, but sometimes I forget to do it. Okay, Olaf. Number two, when writing a caption, this caption is not an editorial by you, the photographer. And as such, you do not want to make too many assumptions. Well, you don't want to make any assumptions about the subjects in your caption. You want to stick to the facts. So, for example, if you wrote in your caption, an unhappy voter or a fortunate survivor, you're now describing and assuming a state of the subject, and that's not appropriate for captions. The reader should be given the facts and allowed to decide for herself or himself the feelings or emotions of subjects in a photo. You just stick to the facts. Okay, great, thank you. So, to summarize, the challenge we're leaving you with is to take at least 20 photos. That's 4 types of photos and 5 of each type. 4 types: the establishing photo, the action photo, the details photo, and the environmental portrait photo. 4 types, 5 each. We're asking you to write a caption for each image. So if you submit 20 photos, we expect 20 captions. And lastly, we're asking you to personally explore and consider how you might take action. So Olaf, we can go to the next slide. And here's a simple example from our Arctic workshop of how one of our participants took action by creating a reusable grocery bag. And for some of us, that might seem obvious in our communities. Maybe we're already doing it, but it wasn't in their community. And so this was a powerful way one young person could take action to make a difference in their community on climate change. So we're asking you additionally, as a final step in your assignment, to at least consider and write about and submit your thoughts about how you could take action. But even better would be if you actually take that action and photograph it like this participant did. Okay, Olaf, next. In the interest of time, Olaf, I think I would like to pass by this part. Thank you. Really quick, one point on technical considerations. When you're photographing your work, really the preferred orientation is a horizontal image. If you shoot some vertical because the scene demands it, great, but really the preferred is horizontal. So please keep that in mind when you're photographing. Okay, Olaf. And then this information is also covered in our handout for you. So Olaf, I'd like to go to here now and turn it over now to our student participants, Christina, Anna, and Nicholas.
Well, first, I would like to say good morning to all the participants, all the people that are listening right now. Also, thanks to Olaf, Bob, and UNEP for receiving us today and giving us the opportunity to talk to you about this project that we call GRULAC Junior. It has been going on for 10 years, and it's a network of young people from Latin America and the Caribbean focused on guaranteeing a secure future through action and care. Throughout discussion and negotiation, young people are prepared for active participation in United Nations conferences related to environment and sustainable development. The purpose of this model is to plan academic activities as well as to take action on these ones that allow the communication of knowledge and proposals regarding the problems currently facing the world. We all have a responsibility to the world to recover what we have lost and to adapt to the new circumstances in which the environment finds itself due to our irresponsible destruction of resources. I would also like to mention that throughout these 10 years, we have been working in many projects, based learning with social impact and hand in hand with OPOC. Some of them are local and some of them have been a bit more international. As it was previously said here, we have been working all around the world, especially with Olaf and with Bala, Canada and other sites. And we have developed a main focus on the town of La Calera, which is where we are located as a school and as students. Our focus is to find a way to make clean water a viable source and to further ado, help to solve the problems of all the contamination that is on the rivers. So yeah, that's basically GRULAC Junior. Now we're going to start the process I'll talk about.
Hi, good morning. So before we start, we're going to set a scene. So right now we're located in La Calera, which is a paramo. We're 2,600 to 3,000 meters above sea level. And these two pictures that you can see, the left one is the paramo of Chingaza, and the right one is the Embalse de San Rafael. In La Calera, it's a very important place on Colombia because we have the nacederos of the water. And there on the left picture is the first nacedero, which is the Paramo of Chingara. The last years, El Colegio Hacienda Los Alcaparros has worked throughout 8th grade to 10th grade with La Calera, doing different types of activities. One of them previously mentioned before, the one of GRULAC Junior. We also make different walks around La Calera and their paramos and different rivers that flow around them, which are the Rio of Tesaca and the White River, in which each of the grades learn different things and take pictures, as Olaf mentioned earlier with the OPOC. That is a really easy way for us to show what is happening right now in La Calera, and we take the 4 different steps mentioned previously, which is the setting of scene, the details, how we impact it, as the portrait is showing right now, that will later be explained by Ana Sofia, and that's the way we use GRULAC and different activities to show how we try to impact differently the community. Thank you very much.
Okay, so taking into account the steps, we get to step 2, which is getting the action. As I was previously saying, we don't just investigate or try to understand the problematics, but we also look for ways to solve them. Being our main problematic, the use of clean water, the finding ways of making it available, we started acting on the community of the little town La Calera, which is where, as I said previously, we're located. We started doing several projects. We started meeting with people and really understanding what their needs are. Because one thing is to investigate, and another completely different is to really understand what they need and provide it to them. So we started doing this project. We started investigating the Bogota River that is also connected throughout this whole Paramo, as Ana Sofia previously said, and also the diverse rivers. And with this into account, we started developing projects, starting conversations, and starting to take action on the clean water possibility.
Okay, so in addition to that, the school has joined waste collection groups in the Teusaca River to clean it. And during this process, we were able to meet important people who seek to create change by collecting garbage and waste. One of these people, it's like Doris, who is a citizen of La Calera, who has dedicated her entire life to collect plastic waste of the Teusaca River. How we can see in the image, the Teusaca River is invaded by plastic waste. And even if people like Doris work every day to clean the river, we can see how the contamination of the river is increasing every day. To conclude, our final objective with this project is to protect our ecosystems. Like we can see on the previous slide and on the image, our paramos, which are a greatest source of water and fauna and flora of community.
The portrait. In these pictures, we see two very real people that form part of our community. On the left, we can see Doris. As Ana Sofia previously said, she is a woman who has dedicated her life to recycling. She wakes up early, very early every morning, and she goes around the town picking up trash and plastics that she can recycle, and later takes her to her warehouse where she will crush it with her feet, because that's a requirement that factories have, that all plastic must be crushed, where she will crush the plastic with her feet and then take it with her van to where the factories receive the plastic so she can get paid. And on the right, we have Don Manuel, who with his family own a territory in the town, and they used to be dedicated to agriculture and cattle, but now they use their territory, their lands, for sustainable tourism. They take tourists on walks and they show tourists how the paramos affect and are affected by people, and how these can change our way of living if they stop being how they are right now. Next, please. It is incredibly important for a school that our projects have an impact. Like we do, our goal is to do research and to learn, but it's also to use all this new knowledge that we gain throughout the year and take it outside our school, outside our community. It is very important for us that our youth takes responsibility for their actions and takes consciousness that they have an impact on their community and on the places that they inhabit. So that's why projects like GRULAC Junior or the investigation of Rio Bogotá are absolutely essential to our school, like sustainable consumption, law and citizenship, research on water quality. These are projects that affect us as much as our community, and these are projects that we need to learn. Next, please. Our projects on fast fashion and its culture, its impact on El Rio Bogotá, and the quality of the water and earth around our water sources are incredibly important for us, because they allow us to learn about the problematics of our people and to also propose solutions about it, because it is very important that we have a social impact, because we need to take action, not only learn about it. And that is why with GRULAC Junior or Rio Bogotá or the sustainable consumption, we project Our youth is taking responsibility through debate and negotiation, and they are being able to analyze and recognize the people that are being affected and how these are being affected by the climate change and are affecting climate change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Nicolas Gomez, Ana Sofia, Cristina, and Ana Sofia, for sharing with us your visualizations and the incredible work you're doing as GRULAC Junior. And also a big thank you to you, dear Olaf, Alec, and Balakrishna, for these past inspiring 1.5 hours. I also want to warmly thank all of you for participating so actively at today's workshop and sharing your inputs. Apologies again for the IT struggles and inconvenience. We are now coming to an end of this workshop. And I therefore just want to remind you once again on what Balakrishna has already mentioned at the beginning of the session. Images can speak louder than words, so to lead local change. So we really hope that this workshop encouraged and empowered you to take an agency and go out there in your communities and surrounding environment and really use the power of images and storytelling to inspire other people in your surrounding, or maybe even on the opposite side of the world, to take actions on the environment. I'm sharing the link to the drive where the to-do list can be found, that Alec already introduced, and where you can also then upload the visualizations that you will be creating as part of this exercise. And in around 3 weeks, UNEP and GRULAC Junior will select the best 10 images, and we will broadcast them on our social media channels with all our networks. So please download the to-do list and go out there, make the images and the captions and upload them in the Google Drive, so that we can select the best images. And with that, okay, I share the link here now. So please copy paste it and access it after the workshop. Also, the recording as well as the presentation will be shared via this Google Drive folder, so you can access this as well there. Yeah, and with that, thank you so much. Muchas gracias a todos. And I'm really curious to see the different visualizations created by all of you in the upcoming days. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Good day. Bye.
Thank you.
Everybody. Thank you so much.
Ciao, ciao.
It was wonderful.